Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro. And welcome back to this mini-series where we are looking at a process by which local governments can go about getting a budget to maintain their water-sensitive urban design assets. Now it's not the only process that a local government can go through, but it's something that I have observed quite a number of local governments go through over time and that I want to share with you. In today's episode, we're down to step 3, and that's deciding which department should be responsible for doing the maintenance, or at least for managing the maintenance and making sure that it gets done, because that's an important distinction. So, the thing about water-sensitive urban design assets is that many of them, think bioretention systems, wetlands, swales, are a strange combination of both green infrastructure, similar to garden beds and parks and natural areas, but also civil infrastructure, because they have pipes, they have concrete, they have metal grates. And because they are this strange combination, it doesn't often line up really smoothly with the departments that already exist within local government for maintaining these assets. But at the same time, because water-sensitive urban design assets, as we're currently building them, are fundamentally stormwater assets, there is this implicit assumption that often goes on, which is, well, the right department to maintain these assets is the stormwater department. But I think that it's really, really important to actually put a conscious effort, when you're on this process towards getting a maintenance budget for water-sensitive urban design, to put a conscious effort into deciding which department is right. Because getting the decision right means lining up with which department has the most appropriate skill sets, has the most knowledge possible. Which department does their skill set line up with the activities that we do most during maintenance? Getting these things right will make the actual maintenance that happens much, much later down here run smoother. So, what I've seen a number of local governments do very, very successfully here is typically there are 3 options for which department in the local government could be responsible for maintenance. Note that we're separating here physically doing the maintenance from being responsible for making sure it gets done. We'll talk about who does the maintenance down in episode 126 primarily, but at the moment in 124 we're talking about which department should be responsible for it. And there are 3 options. There's the stormwater department, so the department that already goes out and maintains pits and pipes, maybe like vegetated channels, maybe drains, maybe open drains. Then there's the parks department, who, as the name suggests, are the ones that look after our open spaces, our parks. And then there's often a natural areas team that might be embedded within the parks department, but they have a fundamentally different skill set. Because whereas the parks skill set is more of a horticulture skill set, the natural areas department is more of an ecology skill set, and the way they approach looking after vegetation is quite different. So the important thing here is that depending on which department the local government chooses, I have observed dramatically changes both the type of maintenance that they end up doing and suggesting that they're going to do, and their initial estimates of how hard or how costly it's going to be. Because, as with everything in life, we all bring to ourselves our own everything in life, our own experiences. So imagine when the topic is maintaining a water-sensitive urban design asset, different departments, when they first come to do it, bring their own skill set to it and try and apply that to the maintenance. So the stormwater department, which might be more used to using machinery, cleaning out sediment all the time, I have observed often comes with a bias of wanting to clean these vegetated assets out with machinery really regularly. The parks department might come with a different bias and be very much like looking for aesthetics of the plants, weed eradication, keeping stuff really neat, whereas the natural areas department might come with a bias towards, okay, we're going to manage this as a whole. It's okay if there are some weeds, as long as they're not getting on top of things. We're going to establish a canopy. They might come with an entirely different approach again. So we need to make the right decision about which department should be responsible for maintenance so that it makes everything that happens after that flow most smoothly. Now, what I've observed several local governments do very successfully here is make this decision with a couple of really well thought out steps. There's an implicit assumption here that someone's driving this process. It could be, so I had the opportunity at one stage to run through Healthy Waterways. We had a workshop training package that we ran on a local government by local government basis, which was dealing with these sorts of issues, well, helping the local government to deal with these sorts of issues. And in that, I essentially got to play the role of external facilitator to help the local government make this decision. But this could be run by internal staff. For example, an environmental planning or environmental policy department could play that role of independent-ish facilitator, helping the three departments, stormwater, parks, natural areas, to decide who should be responsible. And where I've seen this done really, really well is those departments and the facilitator go for a few field visits one morning. They go out to a bunch of these assets and they go and take a look around. And essentially with the focus of, hey, what sorts of activities would you need to do to this to keep it functioning? And really, really importantly, how frequently would you do them? So we look at a bunch of assets and we just keep talking around those particular points. I've seen a few local governments do this really nicely, and then come back into a room and see if people can agree. Now up front, there's something that needs to happen up front if that's going to work. The problem here is that at this stage, no one actually has a budget to do this maintenance. So you would be bonkers. Like, imagine that you're in the parks department, right? You have a lot of parks to look after. Best case scenario, you have just enough money to look after them, but no spare. Worst case scenario, like is the case in essentially all infrastructure management in Australia, you do not have enough budget to look after the stuff you already have to look after. So why on earth would you want to put up your hands to take on more responsibility? There's no way. You would be nuts to do it, right? So implicit in this, or upfront in this, I really recommend that the three departments agree something between them. And this is assuming that this is happening at an officer level. And that agreement is this, that regardless of what happens in this discussion, regardless of who we settle on being the most logical department to maintain this stuff, that none of the departments, particularly not the other two, who aren't the most, ideal to do the maintenance, that none of the departments are going to put any pressure until a budget comes through, right? Until we get further down in this process and a budget actually exists, none of the other departments are going to put pressure on the department that's decided to do the works. We need to reduce the risk for whichever department puts up their hand at the end of this and goes, it should be us. We need to reduce the risk so that so once they've done that, no one is like, sweet, yours, poof, handball. We need to make an agreement up front and stick by it, that until the budget comes through, we are not going to just drop this on you and run away. So we make that agreement up front. We go out on site and look at stuff around the question of, look, what maintenance do we need to do most? What's the maintenance we need to do? And how frequently do we need to do each of those parts? And then we come back in the office and have the discussion. Okay, based on the maintenance that needs to be done and based on the frequency of it, which department has the most appropriate skill set to do that? And it's on the basis of that decision that you go, okay, you know what? It should be the department. And that department puts up a hand and says, okay, we'll take it. Let's move on towards getting the business case through doing this. And the other two departments support that first department in getting the budget. That's really key. It's not a case of one department puts up their hand and the other's like, sweet, it's yours, you go make the rest of this case. All three departments. Because until you brief up and get approval, right, there's still confusion here about who should be responsible. And until you've got that approval, it doesn't really matter whether one department's put up their hand, right? Until you get approval for your process at the end through this briefing, it doesn't matter. So one department puts up their hand and says, it should be us. And the other two departments go, okay, we're with you. We're going to help you get a budget. And then we move on to the next step. Okay? We hope you found that useful. We look forward to seeing you again for the next video where we're going to talk about building a business case. But until then, have a good time. Think about how you can use this in your work, and we'll see you soon.